Machina Arcana, Horror in the Ice, one player playthrough. Come on back after the break. Hey everybody, welcome to the show, Board Game Reviews. This is a YouTube channel dedicated to the tabletop gaming hobby, and this is video as part of a video series looking at the game of Machina Arcana. Now, Machina Arcana is a cooperative horror style game, much in the similar vein of the classic Arkham horror games or anything along those lines, but the basic idea is you are a survivor trying to get through the storyline. Various different storylines come with the base game, 3 in total for the base game, plus there's many more if you get the expansions. But the basic idea is you're playing through a very story-driven cooperative game where it's basically you and your friends versus the game. Can you get through the entire campaign or the entire story and survive? Then you're going to be a victor. Or if your heroes will be wiped out somewhere along the way, then you're going to be the horrible victims of the horrors in the ice. Because we're going to play through the horrors in the ice campaign right here, and I'm going to play through all the chapters. Now, I'm going to break this video down into multiple smaller chunks by having every video be a couple of chapters, depending on how long every one of these individual chapters go. But this video is part of a video series. If all you want is just a quick overview, you want to actually learn how to play the game, or you want my full review of the game, check out the other videos in the series. This is just going to be a gameplay video itself. Now, this channel is 100% sponsor free. I don't have the luxury of sponsorships. As a matter of fact, all the content you see here on this channel is from my own pocket. So if you want to help keep the channel growing strong, like and subscribe. Also, you can think about supporting the channel over on Patreon. Patreon.com/OTSBGR. Your support over on the channel just by tossing $1 single in the tip jar can be a wonderful thank you, and a way of saying thanks for all the wonderful content I put out there. Remember, this channel is sponsor free, so everything you see here comes out of my own pocketbook, so I really do appreciate your support, your likes, your subscription, and heck, tossing that dollar over in the tip jar over on Patreon. Now, if you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I do my best to get a hold of those comments and make sure I answer them as quickly as I can. You can also feel free to email me at off-the-shelf board game reviews. That's OTSBGR@gmail.com. Enter email as quickly as I can, but that's enough of the talk. Let's go ahead and start the game for Machina Arcana. Now, for this playthrough video, I'm going to walk us through all the steps that basically go through the complete turns and the overview of how everything is going to turn out. But as the videos go on, I'm going to be doing that much less and just doing the true gameplay for the game. So in the beginning, expect it to be a little bit longer. As we go further in chapters, these videos are going to start going much, much faster. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to set up the game. And the way we're going to set up the game is we're going to start with one of our player boards and play. So I've already randomly selected a player board, and this is a player board we're going to start with. And the basic way we do is we take the stack of all the player boards, make sure we remove the scenario specific player boards, and we're going to shuffle them up, flip over a couple of them, and then draw one from the bottom, and that's going to be our starting player board. Now, once we have our starting player board, the next thing we need to do is we need to figure out exactly which one of the heroes we want to play. So I've gone through all the heroes here, and I have decided among all the heroes, there's multiple different heroes that come with the base game, 8 of them total, 2 for each one of the professions. But I have decided to play Blenda Warren because I like the concept of the bruiser, and I think playing a bruiser is going to be lots and lots of fun. I like the way that her abilities work out and how everything works out for her card on her abilities. Next up, we're going to go ahead and pick whichever chapter we're going to be playing through. In this case, we are playing through Horror in the Ice. Now, these cards right here are not shuffled at all. We want to make sure we have them organized in the fact that we have number 1 on top all the way down to the final chapter, wherever that happens to be. Also, if there's an endgame card mix in there, we want to make sure we take out all the endgame cards and put them off to the side. So we're basically playing through chapters 1 through however many chapters happen to be with the story you're playing. This specific story right here has 10 chapters for the whole thing. After that, we're simply going to place this scenario deck right here on top of the chapter board, and then we're going to place the monster threat and the monster level at the level 1 on the currently on the chapter board. This is the monster threat. This is currently the monster level. It goes all the way from 1 to 5. Now, one thing you need to be very careful of as the monster threat goes up, once we get to the end, and this is actually the end right here. Don't think this is the end, so I can actually get the threat all the way to here without any problems. It's once the threat goes to this space right here, that's when the monster level is going to advance. And as the monster level goes up, more and more difficult enemies are going to start coming into the board, and more challenging enemies, because at the beginning of the game, we're going to basically start with the level 1 enemies, which is signified with level 1 right here. And these enemies have special abilities. They have their armor, their mind defense, their hit points, and how much stamina they have for them to use their various abilities. But in the beginning, the enemies are not that difficult. But as we play the game, as the monsters start leveling up, we're going to start encountering much more difficult enemies and much more hit points, much more damage, and much more, let's just say they have many, many ways to be much more nasty to our heroes. Next up, we need to get the event decks for our heroes, which are the good events, and then we need to take the event cards, which are the negative ones, which are based on, well, let's just call those the horror events, which are going to be occurring as we play the game. But we're going to make sure we shuffle in the basic ones, which is the ones that are going to be included in every single game, and we're also going to include the ones that are scenario specific. Now, every one of the scenarios has a specific symbol that represents that scenario. For example, the horror and the ice uses this little snowflake symbol, and we can always tell where that symbol is just by looking at the back of the chapter deck right there. It shows us exactly what symbol that is. But we're going to shuffle all these cards into the event deck, and we're also going to shuffle them all into the horror deck. And that way, every time you play every single scenario, they're always going to have their own individual flavor because of the cards that are basically going to be they're going to match the scenario and the storyline that you're playing based on that specific scenario. Next up, we just need to set up every one of our individual heroes. Every player is going to take a hero board, which is going to have a symbol. We're going to make sure we take these 3 matching tokens right here. We're going to have our essence, we're going to have our health, and we're going to have our stamina. We always start with our essence down at level 0, but our health and our stamina is going to be based on our hero cards right here. And it's a little bit hard to see on the camera right here. So every one of our heroes is going to have a whole bunch of special abilities based on the bottom of the card. We're going to have our current max, or our current armor. We're going to have our current mind. We're going to have our maximum amount of essence, we're going to have a maximum amount of health, and we're also going to have our maximum amount of stamina. Now, every single hero is always going to start with 0 essence. That number right here is just basically the maximum amount of essence they can ever have, but their health and their stamina is going to start at their maximums that's specific for their specific hero. So we see in this case that Blenda does start with 6 health, and she starts with 6 stamina. After we've got our hero boards all set up, we just need to shuffle our individual item decks. We have the gear decks, we have the apparel decks, we have the artifact deck, and then we have the consumable deck, which is basically items that are going to give us one shots. Basically, think about your potions or your batteries or anything like that, because remember, this is basically a Lovecraftian steampunk theme style game. Now, at the start of the game, these are going to be the level 1 decks. These are only going to be the level 1 cards. As the game starts advancing, we're going to start shuffling the level 2 cards and the level 3 cards in these decks, which is going to give us the much more powerful equipment to start dealing with the more powerful monsters we will be encountering very quickly as the storyline starts going on. And then the only thing left to do is flipping over the top chapter card, and it's going to tell us a couple different things. It's going to tell us exactly what we need to do. It's going to give us some very thematic text. It's also going to do 2 very, very important things. It's going to tell us what the current spawn rating is, and it's also going to tell us what the current horror rating is. So just make sure we set the horror rating and the spawn rating. Now, some scenarios may not have a spawn rating, some may not have a horror rating, it may just be blank, or some may have specific rules that are going to tell you exactly how they're going to come into play based on various different actions. But the most important thing to do is look right here, and this is going to tell us the most important thing, which is going to tell us how to get this started. And it's going to tell us to place an entry token on the board. So let's go ahead and place the entry token right here on the board. And then we are going to add our hero onto the board, and our hero must be starting either on the spawn token or next to the spawn token. We're going to place our hero right here on the spawn token because this is going to put us next to an event space, a recharge space, and a treasure chest. The only negative, though, is that does mean that we are very close to, well, the traps, but we're also closer to 2 spawn spaces, which means we're very close to the bad guys. Well, you got to take a little risk sometimes, because with the risks comes the better rewards. So let's go ahead and start our scenario with a very thematic text where I want to have my own stunt double who does some dramatic reading for me. Unfortunately, since this is a one-man show, you got to listen to my voice now. As we stepped into the dark, an uncanny gust of wind followed us in and continued on down through the wide and spacious halls, echoing incessantly. Our eyes still blinking from the polar glare adapted at last, and we could finally make out our surroundings. There was scant light, yet enough for us to discover ancient and complex corridors, halls, and rooms built by unknown hands aeons ago. What craft erected these delicate walls and exquisite pillars that pose above the precisely detailed flooring of stone slabs beneath our feet? The whole space seemed to pulsate with strange rhythm, faint, indistinct, as we embarked on our exploration of the subterranean ruins. The feeling of disquiet only continued to grow. The further we ventured in, the more it appeared that in some bizarre way the place itself became aware of our presence, and we seemed to be alone no longer. Now the game is going to be played out over rounds, and every single round is broken down into basically 4 quick phases. The first phase is going to be the Explorer phase, where our heroes get to do everything. Again, I'm playing this as a true one-player game, and the main reason why I chose to do this is because I know there's a lot of solo gamers out there who love solo gaming, but they don't always enjoy playing solo games where they need to control multiple heroes. Nice thing about this game is this is a true solo game where you can play with one hero, and you can see it's very possible to do so. So we're going to be playing this game with one hero, but basically during the Explorer phase, generally all the explorers will get to act. After the Explorer phase is over, we're going to move into the monster phase, where monsters are going to possibly spawn. They don't get to activate just yet. After the monster phase, we're going to go to the horror phase, where possibly horrific things are going to happen. And if you ever seen me roll dice before, yes, there's going to be a horror phase every single round. Trust me on this one. Just watch how I roll the dice. Once we're done with the horror phase, the final thing we're going to do is the monsters are going to get to activate. And they're going to be doing their darndest to try to end our lives, or in this case, our life, as we try to barrel through these 10 chapters of horror in the ice. So in an effort to avoid getting everybody dizzy by flipping back and forth between the cameras constantly every 5 seconds, which is just going to drive all of us crazy, I'm going to just announce what I'm going to do my actions, then I'll go over to the character sheet and show you spending the stamina for the requirements of everything I'm doing here. Just again, I'm trying to do this to make it so it doesn't feel like we're spastically bouncing back and forth between the cameras, because I know I wouldn't enjoy watching it, so I'm going to assume you're going to feel the same way. So the first thing that we are going to do is every single time we start the Explorer phase, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to refresh completely, which means all of our heroes are going to go back up to their maximum stamina, and then the heroes can activate in any player order. Just sharing that with you just so you understand how the full rules work. We're only going to play a one hero game here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spend 1 stamina to move over here. Now we can always move diagonals or orthogonals, which is nice about the game. Once I spent the 1 stamina, I'm going to go ahead and decide that I'm going to interact with this chest over here. To interact with the chest, that's going to cost 3 stamina. So let's go and look at our hero sheet and show how we spent the 4 stamina. So we spent 1 stamina for the movement, then we're going to spend 3 stamina for the searching of the chest right there. And the nice thing about exploring any chest is the first thing we're going to do before we go any further is we're going to gain 1 essence. Now essence is a wonderful stat, and essence allows us to do a lot of things. First of all, essence allows us to generally advance the storyline, because without essence you cannot activate the chapter spaces. You have to be activating chapter spaces to progress the storyline. As you activate these chapter spaces, we're going to flip to the next chapter of the story. And most of the time, that's basically our objective. Now, individual chapters have some requirements that are completely different. Activating chapter space doesn't do anything for you at all. And some chapters have alternate ways. You can either activate the chapter space or do another action to go ahead and advance the chapter. But Essence allows us to activate chapter spaces. Essence allows us to cancel spawn locations. Essence can also replace our hit points, because when we take damage, we can either take damage directly to our health, or we take damage to our essence. And not only that, essence can also be used to activate special abilities. So essence is a very, very powerful attribute. Probably the most important attribute in the game, because without essence, you can't even advance the storyline. So the first thing we're going to do, like I said, is we're going to gain that 1 essence. And then we're going to draw the top 2 cards from any one of the item decks that we chose. Now, the nice and the interesting thing about this, while we do have 4 decks to choose from, we're going to have 1 central discard pile for all 4 of these decks. And when we draw these 2 cards from any one of these decks for the chest, we're going to draw these cards 1 at a time, which means I can draw 1 card from every one of the decks, or I can draw 2 cards from the same deck. Now, I'm going to choose. That was funny. I'm going to choose to draw 2 cards. And the reason why I'm drawing 2 cards from the item deck here is because my hero has a special ability, since they are a brawler, that whenever we draw weapons out of the weapon deck, we can go ahead and equip them immediately for free if we don't have anything equipped. And trust me, you want to get gear equipped as quickly as possible, because that's going to be the only way you're going to fight off all the horrors and monstrosities that you're going to be fighting in this game. So now that we've drawn our 2 cards right here, we need to make a choice with one of these cards. We're either going to put one of these cards back on top of the deck where it came from, or we're going to go ahead and discard this card. Now, why would you want to put them back on top versus discarding? Well, in a multiplayer game, it could be pretty smart to say, hey, you know, this card is not going to be that great for me, but player to my left, this card may be great for you, so I'm going to put this card right back on the top. So that means you know that if you go find a chest, that's going to be the first card you're going to draw. But instead, we're going to take this card, and actually, this is a really tough choice now. So basically what we're looking at right here is I have a defensive item and I have an offensive item. I am thinking that I'm going to start off going offensive because I know monsters are going to start spawning very, very quickly. And in a one hero game, if I cannot stay ahead of the spawn, I'm going to be quickly, very, very quickly overrun. So I'm going to go ahead and take this item. So we're going to move over to our hero, and we're going to take this item, and we are going to go ahead and equip this item immediately. So I'm just going to put it over here to the side, just like this. I know it's kind of hard to read on this camera. It's not the best camera. I do need to get this camera replaced once I can afford it. But we now have this item equipped because that is our special ability as a bruiser. We can equip 1 year item for free. Now, if we already have an item equipped, that means we're going to have to replace that item that's equipped. But the nice thing is that we definitely do have an item equipped now. And then the only thing left to do is to put a destroyed token on that item to signify that this item has been used and we cannot use that item anymore. Or any of the other explorers can use this item because it's now used up for the space. Now I do have 2 stamina left over, and I have a couple different options right here, and I think I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and activate this recharge station right here. Now the nice thing about activating recharge stations, it does cost 1 stamina to activate it, but when I activate it, I'm going to roll this die. Now this die is going to give us various different things. It's either going to give us nothing, which is terrible, or it's going to give us up to 3 stamina, or it's going to allow us to heal 1 wound. So I'm really, really hoping what's going to happen here is I'm going to recharge my stamina. So I'm going to spend 1 stamina. If we get that 3 stamina, that's going to be awesome for us. So let's go ahead and roll the die. And remember, we have spent that stamina. I'll show you the spending of the stamina on my character sheet in just a moment. But let's roll and see what we're going to get. And we gained 3 stamina. That is super duper awesome. So going back over to our character sheet, you will see that we spent 1 stamina to go ahead and activate the recharge station, and then it's going to regain us 3 stamina. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3 stamina is what we're going to gain, and we are now back up to 4 stamina. So the next thing we need to do is we need to signify that this recharge station has been used up, and we're off to a swimming start. We're actually doing really, really good right now at the start of this game. So the next thing we do have is we have this event space right there. So since I have 4 stamina, I think I'm going to go ahead and activate that event space because that could be really darn awesome for us. Additionally, the other option I have right now, since I do have 4 stamina, it costs 1 stamina per space we want to move, is I could probably go 1, 2, 3, 4 and get all the way over there. Or I go 1, 2, 3, 4 just to move closer to the chapter space right here if I really want to. But I think I'm going to play smart. I want to go ahead and get some pretty decent gear for my hero, get equipped pretty darn decently, and then go for that chapter space, because like I said, once the chapters start rolling, this game can be pretty darn forgiving if you advance into further chapters and your hero just isn't quite ready for the greater challenges. So let's go ahead and spend that 3 stamina to activate that event space. So the nice thing about activating event space, just like opening that treasure chest, it's going to give us 1 essence. And again, we have 2 essence. Don't forget our max essence though that we can ever have is going to be 4, so we can never go beyond that, which is really important because it actually costs 4 essence just to activate the chapter space, so it can be very, very important. So we gained our 1 essence there, and the next thing we are going to do is we're going to draw the top card of the event deck, and we're going to go ahead and read it out loud in my very, very horribly dramatic thematic voice. In life, we're all presented with choices, some of them beyond our control. On this horrific journey, I've picked up a few things along the way. Certain things develop over time and stick with us, and not all of them good. Not all urges can be controlled, and I often find myself fighting with who I am and who I wish to be. So this card has a really cool power. This is actually going to be a bound. I almost said chain. That would have been kind of funny. This is going to be a bound event, which means it's going to be added onto my hero card, which is going to be a permanent power added onto my hero until I burn this card. So what I can do is I can discard this card, and since this does not have a stamina cost, that means I can use this card at any time, even on the bad guy phase. But I can discard this card to trigger all traps on the board. Now, if I haven't gone over this with you, and obviously I haven't because I'm recording the video, these are trap spaces. Any space that looks like it has a vent underneath it or like a grill on it is a trap space. Anything that happens to be on trap space when traps are activated is going to take damage. So I could use this at a future date, which would be very powerful, or I can just keep this card on my hero, give me a permanent ability, and says, when you recharge, restore 1 stamina. Well, unfortunately, I already did a recharge, which could have given me a total of 4 stamina, which would have been absolutely fantastic. But we're beyond that point. So let's go ahead and take this and add this to our hero. That's now a bound power for our hero. Our hero now has that power until I decide to burn it to go ahead and activate all the traps on the board. Now, since I did activate that event space, let's go ahead and burn 1, 2, 3 stamina total for doing that action. And as we go back to our game board, we are going to see that we are going to show that this event space has been used up. And that is going to be end of that action for us, and we still have 1 stamina left over. Now in this game, there is generally not a lot of reasons to save stamina between rounds for the simple fact that any stamina that is not used, you're going to lose. So it's always a good idea to go ahead and spend the stamina. So I do have 1 stamina left over. I basically need to figure out where I want to go. Now I can use a thought process. If I go further this way, for example, to go over here, that does mean that if any monsters spawn right here, if I roll for it, trust me, I'm going to spawn a monster. Watch how I roll dice. It's just how I roll dice. It's going to move 1, 2 spaces over there, which means it's going to have to spend some stamina to get to me, which means that it may not be able to attack me depending on what monster I draw. Some have anywhere from 3 to 5 stamina. Some of their abilities use anywhere from 2 to 3 stamina. So you can kind of do the mental math and figure that there's a slight chance I might get a little bit lucky. The problem is that the more I go over here, that means the more stamina I need to use to go where I'm trying to get to. So what I'm thinking is I want to move in a way that's going to force the monster to spend a little bit of stamina, but also get me closer to my goal. So I'm just going to spend 1 stamina to go ahead and move over to this location just right there. And we'll come back over to our player board and we'll spend the last of our stamina, signifying that our hero is done activating. This is also going to be the end of the explorer turn because we don't have any other explorers to go. So now the only thing left to do is to go ahead and go on to the spawn phase. Oh yeah. Let's start spawning monsters. Now the way the spawn phase works is it's going to be roll of a d10, and what we're looking for is a number, and we're going to use that number and we're going to cross-reference against the current spawn level. So the current spawn level happens to be set at 7 right now, and of course the very first thing we should actually do is make sure there's at least 1 spawn space left available on the current heroes tile. We have 2 of them, so we don't need to worry about that. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to roll the die to see if we're going to have any spawns. So basically, since the spawn level is currently at 7, if I get a 7 or higher on this D10, and remember on D10s, a 0 is actually a 10, unless you want to play on the easy mode, because this game does have a rule for easy mode, where a 0 is actually a 0. But again, you have to decide to play on easy mode. I'm not doing that. So we're going to go and roll the die here, and we are looking for... So we're simply going to lower their spawn rate down to 6, and then no monsters get to spawn. Quite yet. Just wait, it's going to happen, because now we get to go to the horror phase. And the horror phase works pretty much just like the spawn phase. We're going to look at the current horror rating right now. We see the horror rating happens to be set at level 4. And we're simply going to roll the d10 again. Now, if we roll a 4 or higher, there's going to be a horror event that's going to occur. If we roll a 3 or less, then the horror rating is going to go down, pretty much ensuring that eventually we're going to get a horror card drawn. So let's go ahead and now I'll show you how my dice normally work. And we got a 4. So looking at the current horror rating, we see that the current horror rating is set to number 4 right now. So next thing we would do is we would reset their current horror rating to whatever the chapter currently says. So if we have managed to get this all the way down to 2, and I rolled a 4 like I just did, this would reset all the way back up to 4, resetting the current horror rating. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to increase the monster threat by 1, which means this is now going to go up to here. Remember, this gets up to here. We're going to start facing level 2 monsters. After that, we're going to draw a horror card from the horror deck, which is going to be this card right here. And let's look at what kind of pain is going to happen for us. Again, in my most dramatic reading. We wandered through the corridors wearily, treading carefully so as to avoid noise. Perhaps we were too tired to notice the tentacles that quietly began to reach out through the symbols on the ground, inching toward our feet. By the time we did, it was too late to resist their slimy grips of iron, and our struggling forms were dragged toward the dark and foreboding place. When this card comes into play, that symbol right there means when the card comes into play, teleport explorers to their nearest spawn space. Hey, it looks like we get some free move out of this at least. So maybe this wasn't absolutely terrible. It wasn't great, but it was absolutely terrible. So we're going to go ahead and move to this spawn space, which is currently our nearest spawn space. Now, the monster level currently set at level 5. Things would be really bad for our explorers, so you do need to understand that this game does give you very strong time pressure. Because as the levels keep going up, once you get to level 5, all the heroes must start destroying their gear to keep going. And if a hero is unable to destroy a piece of gear, they are going to be instantly destroyed, and that hero is going to be removed from the game. So the only thing next to do is go down to the monster activation. Oh, look, no monsters. So let's go and start the new round with the explorer phase. And the first thing we need to do is go ahead and reset our stamina all the way back up to 6. And now we need to decide exactly what we want to do for our hero. So I'm thinking I'm going to start working towards this workbench, because workbenches are extremely powerful and they're very, very nice. And not only that, by working towards that workbench, I'm also going to go ahead and work by that chest right there, which I think is very, very cool. So let's go and spend 2 stamina right there, and we'll spend 3 more stamina to go ahead and open up that chest. So let's go ahead and go over to our player board. We just spent a total of 2 for moving, and then we spent 3 to open the chest. Now remember, the first thing that happens when we open a chest is our essence goes up, so now we have 3 essence. Don't forget our essence maximum is 4 though. And now I have some decisions exactly what I want to do, and I think what we're going to do now is we're going to grab 1 weapon card, or 1 item card, on 1 apparel card, and then now that I picked my 2 cards, let's go ahead and reveal them, because this may make a whole bunch of different decisions for us. So we're going to get Arcane Powder, which is very nice. This is actually an augment, which we could use with our Cicatrizer, or Cicatrizer, I guess is what it's really called. I could, if I get that, I can augment our Cicatrizer, which is going to allow it to do 1 more point of damage, and it's going to turn all of its damage into Arcane. If I go ahead and take that, that could be really, really nice. The other thing I can do is I can take this Displacer Vest, which is when you are hit, move up to 1 space. Not only that's going to increase my armor by 1, it's going to increase my willpower by 1, which could be very, very awesome also. So this is a really hard choice. If I take this, I can't equip it because it's an augment, which means I cannot add it on because I already have a main item right there, so it would not work. And since I don't have the correct class, which allows me to auto-equip a apparel item, that would also go into my inventory. So whichever card I take, it's going to go into my inventory. I really don't have a good choice here. So let's go and put this Displacer Vest back on top of the deck. Now I could decide to destroy it, but I really do like that item card, and I'm actually looking forward to getting it. So that Arcane Powder is just going to go into our inventory. And the only thing left to do now is to put a destroyed token on top of that chest. Now I do have 1 more point of stamina left over, and I'm going to spend that last point of stamina. I'm going to move, well, if I move there, it doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter. If I go here, I'm still 1 space away from the spawn point. If I move here, same. So I'm just going to move right there. And I'll go back over to our hero, spend our last point of stamina, and then we're going to go ahead and see if we're going to spawn a monster. Remember, our spawn level is currently set to number 6. So let's go ahead and roll our die, see if we're going to get any monsters to come out on the board. And we got a 3. You know, it's really funny. The dice are only doing this because I told you I'm going to spawn a million monsters on the board. I swear the dice are listening to me. Now the next question is, how long have dice been talking to me? I know it's too long. So we're going to go ahead and lower the spawn rate down to 5. And the next thing we're going to do is roll for horror. Now remember, the horror level is currently set to 4. So let's go ahead and see if we can roll a 3 or less. If we got 3 or less, no horror event. We'll roll and we will get a 4. So since we managed to roll a 4, we don't need to worry about resetting the horror rating, because that's basically the horror rating for the chapter. But we are going to increase the threat level by 1. And then we get to draw another one of these fun little cards and find out exactly what is going to happen to our lone hero here. Trapped contraptions. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. That's just a little bit ominous. Not a mere warning, for each step brings these trespassers closer to death as the unseen glyphs above faintly glowed ominously. 3 times. So when any action space is activated, we're going to perform an arcane attack of 3, 2, 1 to all the explorers. This is basically saying that anytime we activate an action space, we're going to put a counter on top of this token, or on top of this card, because this is going to be our first top card right now. That's going to be on top of our horror deck right now. Once we put the 3rd item on top of this, that is going to activate this card, and every single one of our heroes is going to take an arcane attack, which is going to be 3 black dice and 1 white dice, which is basically meaning that every single one of our heroes is going to take a point of damage, because I don't think anybody's going to get their armor level that quite high, unless I roll terribly, which isn't going to happen here. So I am hoping beyond hope that this card is going to be replaced very, very quickly. Super quickly is actually what I'm hoping for. But that is basically it for the horror phase. Now we get to go to the monster activation phase. And of course, we don't have any monsters spawned yet, just yet. That does mean now we get to go back to the explorer phase. And for the explorer phase, we need to make sure we reset our stamina all the way back up to 6. And then we need to figure out exactly what we want to do with our hero right here. I am thinking what I am going to do is I'm just simply going to spend 1 stamina to go ahead and move right next to that workbench right there. Now, workbenches are extremely powerful and they are very, very awesome. So the very first thing we're going to do is activate a workbench is we get to draw 3 cards. Let's go ahead and get some variety going right here. Let's go ahead and grab an apparel. Let's go ahead and pick a artifact. And then let's go ahead and pick a consumable. So these are going to be our 3 cards right here. So let's go ahead and reveal the 3 cards that we got right here. Let's just go over them so you can see exactly the kind of the cool things we're looking at right here. Of course, we already know about the Displacer Vest. We get to see the next thing. It's going to be a Reflexive Sextant. On new round, move up to 1 space. Now, that is actually very cool. That's a free point of movement, which is effectively 1 free point of stamina. That's awesome. When you activate Recharge Station, restore 1 stamina. Wow, that is extremely awesome. The next thing we get is this is our consumable called the Telluric Rheostat. If we use it and destroy this, we can reset the spawn and the horror ratings. Not that big of a deal, but this is one I like. This one says if we take this, spend 1 stamina, and destroy this card, we can skip the spawn phase completely. That can actually come in very, very handy, especially on later turns where we're trying to control the flow and the tempo of the game. But now we need to figure out which one of these items we like. I was originally thinking that we were just going to take the Displacer Vest because that's really darn cool. That's a point of armor, that's a point of mind. That's going to make us a little bit harder to kill, which is going to be really darn cool. Unfortunately, I like that Reflective Sextant. If I have this equipped, it's going to increase my mind by 1, which is nice, but the ability to gain 1 stamina at all recharge stations and on a new round getting 1 free point of movement, that can be really, really awesome. So we need to decide if we are going to destroy these items or put them back. I'm going to go ahead and destroy the consumable. I'm still wearing the Displacer Vest, so I'm going to put that on top, and this is going to go in my inventory. Now, the really great thing about activating workbenches is, unlike the treasure chest where you only get to the ability to do your main style of equipment for free, you actually get to do a complete equipment here. And also, I should also include that whenever you activate a workbench, you can also take items in your inventory and put them back in the respective decks, or even discard them based on the cards you also got. So I could have actually did some more trading between those cards, but I liked what I did there. I liked how that worked out. That worked out much better in my opinion. But now, since we get the use inventory ability, that means that I can go ahead and use inventory is basically a fancy way of equip stuff, if you really want to think about it that way. But we can go ahead and add this Arcane Powder as an add-on to the Cicatrizer, which is going to now mean that this weapon for 3 stamina has a range of 4. It's going to do 3 white dice of damage plus another 1 automatic, I'm not point damage, an automatic hit, plus 1 more hit, which means the absolute minimum I can roll is a 1, and hopefully I won't roll that terrible. But also, whenever I get a kill, I'm also going to restore 1 health. That is absolutely awesome. So let's go ahead and do that. That's going to be equipped for us. And the next thing we're going to do is we are definitely going to equip this Reflective Sextant. I got to make sure that I don't forget to activate it because that is an extremely awesome card. I like that a lot. Final thing to do is this workbench is now destroyed. So let's go ahead and head over to our hero to signify what we did. We moved 1 space for 1 stamina, and then we spent 3 stamina activating that workbench. Let's go ahead and burn our last 2 points of stamina to do a little bit more movement. So let's go ahead and go 1, 2 spaces right there. And now we get to go to the spawn phase. And I'm pretty sure now we're going to spawn something. Let's go ahead and roll the die and see exactly what we're going to get. Remember, the current spawn level is set to 5. And I rolled a 1. This is actually extremely funny. In the future, whenever I play a game, I must taunt it and tell it it's going to do something because it will do the exact opposite. That is going to be my future strategy in all board games and all videos I film. Next up, we're going to roll for the current horror rating. And remember, the horror rating is 4 because that's one thing that has not moved too much. And we got a 4. So we would reset the horror rating. We don't need to worry about that. We're going to increase the threat level by 1. And we're seeing that threat level is quickly climbing up very, very quickly. And then we're going to draw another horror event card, and we're going to see exactly what kind of fun we get to encounter. So, oh, this one's terrible. The only good thing about this card coming up right now is this does mean that it's going to cover up the Trap Contraptions card, and now the Trap Contraptions card is no longer the top card. I don't need to worry about that exploding when I start exploring some of these chests. So that's actually a good thing, because we explored one chest, which means we only had one counter on top of it. So it gets to go away. That makes me happy. Okay, paralyzing fog. A gust of strange fumes filled the place like a giant wave, and after only a few moments, we were left paralyzed, frozen in position as the miasma enveloped us. Our open eyes watered with our futile efforts to remain mobile, and it was only sheer desperation that allowed us to take any action at all. When this card comes into play, explorers cannot move for the next round until the next horror phase starts. Well, that's kind of not great. The good news is we got rid of that exploding thing. The other good news is that I have the reflexive sextant, so I get a little bit of my movement. Not horrible, not great. It's not horrible. It could have been a heck of a lot worse. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the monster phase, and we're actually doing really good for monsters, so you get to see how the monster phase is not very exciting quite yet. Let's go and start the new explorer phase by refreshing our stamina all the way back up to 6. Now, remember, we do have this wonderful, wonderful item right here called the Reflexive Sextant, which means that whenever a new round starts, I get to move 1 free space for free. And that actually says move. The nice thing about this game is very specific about its terminology and everything like that. So it does mean that since it says cannot move and the card allows you to move, it didn't say you can shift or anything like that. It says move, so I can't actually get a move off. So the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spend 3 stamina, and we're going to go ahead and interact with this space right here. And that event space is going to allow us to max our essence all the way up to 4. And remember, our maximum amount of essence that we can ever get is going to be 4, so we cannot go any higher than that. So after we gain 1 essence, we're going to draw the top card of this deck right here, and we get to see what is going to happen. Well, this is going to be a worthless card for us right now. It's a cool card, but kind of worthless for us right now. But let's see how this works. Arcane Guardian. Curiosity may bring about my end someday, but not yet. The strange device was easy to operate, and I simply could not resist the urge to fiddle with it. Luckily for me, triggering it merely resulted in an eerie cloud of dark smoke which slowly filled the area. The fumes calmed our fears. Perhaps it will be harmful to the monsters. When this card is drawn, we do an arcane attack versus all monsters are on the current hero's tile. Fortunately, there's no monsters on the current hero's tile, so we're going to remove that card, and it's going to go into the discard pile. Let's go ahead and place that card right there on the discard pile, and that is basically that. Let's go ahead and signifies that this event space has been destroyed. And going back to our hero, let's go and spend our 3 stamina, leaving us with 3 stamina left over. One important thing to understand is when a hero ends their turn, if they have any stamina left over, we must bring their stamina down to 0. So we did lose all that extra stamina to do that darn paralyzing fog. But that's okay. Let's go ahead. Okay, it's not really okay. I would love to move 3 spaces, which would have put me right there, which would have been absolutely awesome, because then I could have activated the chapter space without any monsters. That would have been pretty darn interesting. But remember, our spawn space is now at level 4. Let's see if we get a real monster spawn going. And that would be is that a 6 or a 9? Not that it really matters. That would be a 9. So, since 9 is equal to or greater than the current spawn rating, that means we get to spawn our very first monster. Now, the first thing we would do before we spawn our monster is we would see if there's 4 or more monsters on our current tile. If there is, the threat rating is also going to go up. But since that's not the current case, what we need to do is we now need to reset the spawn rating all the way back up to 7. And then we are simply going to spawn a monster, which is going to cause our monster queue. And these are going to activate from the left to the right. So let's go ahead and activate or draw our very first monster, which is going to be a deep one. Well, you know, that couldn't be much more Lovecraftian than your standard deep one. So let's just go ahead and keep rolling with the Lovecraft love going on here. So let's go over this creature really quick here. We see the deep one has 3 armor, which means I need to roll a 3 or higher on the total number of the dice to do 1 point of damage. It has 3 will, which allows us to resist arcane. And that's extremely important because remember now my rifle is an arcane rifle, which means I need to roll a 3 or higher on the will stat to do a point of damage. It only has 1 hit point. It has 5 stamina, which is going to use for its movement and also for its special abilities, which is a 2 stamina, 2 range, 3 dice attack. When this monster hits, I'm going to roll the event die. If I roll an 8 or higher, I'm going to increase the monster threat by 1. This thing needs to die very, very quickly. When it comes into play, increase the monster threat level by 1. I do not like that monster at all, Sam. I do not like it like green eggs and Lovecraftian ham. So let's go ahead and increase the threat rating by 1 because that deep one entering the game board. And then I just need to find the little standee for the deep one, which will be right here. And it's going to spawn on the spawn space that is closest to my hero. Now it's not going to activate yet. It does that during the monster phase. The next thing we get is the horror phase. And for the horror phase, we're looking at a 4 or less. And we got a 2. Hey, for the first time, we're not going to have a horror phase. So let's go ahead and go back over to our tracker right here. Let's reduce the horror phase all the way down to 3. And now we get to go to the monster activation phase. Now monsters can be in 2 basic activation phases when you're playing this game. Generally speaking, most monsters are going to be what's called the mindless monster phase. That means that there has not been a player in the game has been eliminated from the game, because when a hero dies, when their explorer dies, that player is effectively eliminated, but you're not really eliminated because you now got to get to control the monsters. So that's a very interesting thing. The very first player who's knocked out is now going to be the enemy doing their best to kill the heroes. So once that happens, that's when they start becoming smart monsters. But since we have mindless monsters, they're going to activate by a various kind of AI. And basically, they're going to move towards a closest hero. If there's a time between closest heroes, they're basically going to go after the hero who has the least amount of hit points remaining. Not the lowest maximum hit points, but the actual lowest amount of hit points remaining. These monsters are out for blood. They're going to do their best to kill their heroes. They're also going to try to do smart attacks. Now remember when I showed you this hero, or this monster right here, it says that for 2 stamina, it's going to attack a range of 2. Well, range of 2 would be right here, and we know that it actually has 5 stamina. So this means that this nasty monster, horrible little creature that I want to destroy very, very quickly, gets to attack me twice. So the first thing that's going to happen is it's going to spend 1 of its 5 stamina to put it right there, which puts it in range of me. Also, when monsters move, they like to be lined up orthogonally over diagonally if they can avoid it. So now that we have managed to get the monster to that spot right there, it is going to attack our hero. Unfortunately, it rolls 3 black die, and we know that my current armor level is only set to 3. So if we look over here, we see that I have 3 armor. So if I get 3 or more dots, I'm going to take a point of damage, and we get to do this twice because that's 4 stamina left over. And don't forget that every time this monster hits, there's a possibility that the monster threat level is going to go up. So let's go and roll our first attack, and we'll get 2, 3, 4, which is equal to my armor, so I'm going to take 1 point of damage. So let's go and track that from a 6 all the way down to a 5. And now I get to roll that nasty little yellow die to see if our threat is going to go up. If I get an 8 or higher, I got a 3, so we're safe. But he still has 2 stamina left over to go ahead and attack me. And we will get, yes, only got a 2, so we didn't take any more damage. So that could have been a lot more painful, but it wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be. It actually wasn't that bad. Let's go and start the next round. And the very first thing we're going to do with the new round is reset our stamina and see if we can make this monster's life as difficult as possible. Now our hero, I should say, has a very cool powers here. Whenever we make a kill, we're going to restore 1 health. And we also have a special ability that we can use that reduces the max stamina of our creature, but we have to do our standard attack to do that. Not going to do that. 2 reasons. 1, I have to be next to the target to do it. That's one reason why I don't want to do it. Second of all, it's not going to be easy to hit this guy because he has 3 armor. So if I was using my special ability, I would need to roll the 3 dots on this die, which is basically effectively rolling a 6. Chances of that happening, pretty darn low. Actually, I should take that back. He's still going to lose his stamina, but for me to actually do damage, I need to roll a 3 or better. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to shoot this creature. Now remember, our nice cicatrizer gun allows us for 3 stamina to attack at a range of 4. So I want to avoid messing up line of sight, but I want to position myself in a way that I can still attack very, very well. So what I think I'm going to do, because my range is 4, I'm going to move 1, 2, 3, which still puts me in line of sight of the monster because that corner of that wall is not going to block our line of sight. I've only spent 3 stamina, so I'm going to spend 3 more stamina to go ahead and activate our gun right here. So that's going to put me all the way out of stamina. Not terrible, but not that bad. And then our gun allows us to roll 3 white dice. So, and don't forget we get to add +1 to whatever we roll here. And since this creature has a will of 3, we just need to get 2 or better on the white dice. So we got a 2, a 2 is 4, and one more is a 5. Easily doing the 1 point of damage we need to do to take this bad guy out. So going back to our deep one right here, we see that the deep one only has 1 hit point. So he is defeated. I'm going to put him in the discard pile, which is going to be off camera. Sorry, I'm trying to keep the cameras focused on the board as much as possible, because I know it's a little bit harder to see game boards when we're using standees, so that was a choice I made on that one. I know normally when I do reviews, I like to show everything, but I want to make sure you're seeing the game board. I figure that'd be more important for all the viewers out there. So the very first thing we need to do is, since I killed a monster, I need to roll for my gun to see if I can restore 1 health. If I get a 7 or higher, I'm going to heal. And we got a 4. We did not heal, but destroying monsters normally allows you to gain essence. Unfortunately, I'm already at my maximum essence, so I'm not going to gain any essence at all. So I do lose out a little bit on that, but at least I managed to remove the deep one from the board. And let's go ahead and remove him from the board officially, and we'll put him over in the discard pile just like that. So we burned through all of our stamina, so our turn is over, so now we get to go back to the spawn phase. So remember, the spawn did reset. So we're basically looking for a 7 or higher to spawn another monster. We got a 3. We'll simply lower the spawn rating. And now let's go ahead and roll for the horror. Now remember, last turn I rolled a 3, so the horror rating went down to a 3. So if I roll a 1 or a 2, we're not going to get anything on the horror deck. If I roll a 3 or higher, horror event's going to occur. And I got a 4. It's kind of funny how many times I've rolled a 4 for the horror event. It's almost like that die is weighted. It's actually getting kind of comical. So this will reset. Threat level goes up by 1. And then we get to draw one of these wonderful little cards, and I get to do another dramatic reading. Overrun. A breeze danced and swirled mesmerizingly around us, moving forward until it reached the places whence our enemies came forth in endless droves. The air grew ominously still as it neared its destination and was replaced by a disquieting glow that emanated from the dreaded spawning points. Repeat the spawn phase. Ew. Well, that's just absolutely terrible. I don't like that at all. Bad card. Okay. Repeat the spawn phase. So the spawn level is now at 6. And we got a 6. Guess what? We're going to have a spawn of a monster. So going back over here, let's go ahead and reset our spawn phase back to 7. And let's see what kind of horrible monstrosity we are going to have to face. Oh, we're going to face a Sorrel. These guys are absolutely wonderful. The Sorrel has 3 armor, 2 will. That's actually a good thing, because remember, my gun does shoot arcane bullets now. It has 2 hit points. Not a good thing. It has 4 stamina. It's a level 1 monster, and it has a 3 stamina attack. No range, basically hits anything adjacent. We're just going to roll 2 black dice and 2 white dice. When this monster is destroyed, it attacks for 3 on all adjacent units. Now remember, I said earlier, this game uses very specific terminology. Units is everything. So if I can make this thing position next to another monster and explode, it will hit those monsters. Fortunately, if it's next to me, that means it's going to explode and it's going to hit me. So it's going to move to the start of the monster queue, and I'm going to adjust this just a little bit to make it a little more easier for everybody to see on the camera. So 1, 2, 3, that should be good enough right there. And let's go and find this nasty little beastie and add it on the board. So the closest spawn point to us will be this spawn point right there. He will spawn just like that. Now that horrible card said we're going to repeat the spawn phase. It doesn't say we're going to repeat the horror phase. Let's go and skip the horror phase we just suffered through. And now we go to the monster activation. Now this monster does have 4 stamina and no range attack. So he's basically going to move 1, 2, 3. And like I said, they like to get adjacent to heroes orthogonally. And since he couldn't attack me anyways, because he only has 1 stamina left over, he will move just like that. Again, just because of the AI of the monsters. That's the end of the monster phase. It's the new Explorer round. So the first thing we need to do is refresh the stamina for all of our Explorers, and then figure out exactly what we want to do. I am actually thinking we are going to activate the chapter space. Now, the reason why I want to activate the chapter space is a couple reasons. One, the very first thing is that it costs 3 stamina and 3 essence to do so. I'm at my max essence right now. If I kill this thing before I take out that chapter space, I'm basically wasting potential free essence. The other way to look at it, though, is my gun takes 3 stamina to shoot it every single time. I could possibly kill this, and when I do, it's going to explode and hurt me quite a bit. I don't like that idea at all. At all. What I want to do is I want to force it to move after me and then I can use my gun to its utmost efficiency. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and activate this chapter space. So this is an unlit chapter space. If it had been lit by me taking out a spawning place, it would actually be a lit chapter space, which means the cost to activate will be a heck of a lot less. Unfortunately, since it's an unlit chapter space, that does mean that's going to cost me 3 stamina. 1, 2, 3. It's also going to cost me 3 essence to go ahead and activate that space. Now that I activated the chapter space, that means the current chapter is going to end, and now we get to go to the next chapter of the story. So we're going to go from chapter 1 to chapter 2. Now these cards just flip over, and we get to look at some very, very cool, very thematic artwork here. And then we get to read chapter 2, and there's some cool things that are going to happen. But let's go ahead and do our very best dramatic reading for 2, Trail of Blood. Although the curious ornamentation on the pillars attested to the great mastery of their creator, should you focus on the fluid curves at length, their sinister and alien contours would force themselves to repeat endlessly in your mind. Tearing my eyes away from the sight, I noticed various trinkets scattered on the floor that resembled standard exploration equipment. It is possible that we are not the first from our era to set foot here. My suspicions grew stronger as our advance revealed yet further signs of cult involvement. Suddenly I lost my balance, and I had to brace myself against the wall for support. Ignoring the cold, organic feel of the stone, I gazed at my feet. My heart skipped a beat when I realized I stood in a thick puddle of blood. There was no body or signs of a struggle, just this dark, congealing ooze. Trailing forward out of sight, we dared not look at each other, lest we see the fear in our companions' faces as we followed the trail into the darkness. Now this is going to be pretty interesting. The very first thing we need to do is we need to reset the spawn rate to a 6, because this is a new spawn rating for the chapter. And of course our horror level is going to remain at 4, because I seem to be doing a great job at doing that. But the interesting thing is this symbol right here signifies that this is actually going to be a blocking chapter. Now blocking chapters are a little bit different, because the interesting thing about blocking chapters is the only way to advance the story is do whatever the requirement is for the blocking chapter. Finding these chapter spaces right here no longer advances the story. Matter of fact, they really don't do anything for us as long as we stay in that current chapter. Now the requirement for this chapter right here is we need to burn our actual life or essence, because remember, don't forget, essence can replace hit points, but we can, if we burn 4 life, we can go to the next chapter. Now it's not that quite a big deal in a 4-player game, but in a 1-hero game, oh yeah, that can be an extremely big deal. So that means I need to be extremely careful of exactly what I would want to do. I can also at any time spend 1 life to go ahead and move 3 spaces as well. Now that does sound very, very cool and risky and dangerous, but you know, that's part of the fun of the game. So if we go ahead and look at this, we know that to advance the chapter, we need to spend 4 life, and at any time I can spend 1 life to move up to 3 spaces. But the very first thing that I see here is explorers may move up to 2 spaces, because that is an event that's going to occur the moment this card comes into play. So we've covered up our chapter token right here. So the first thing we get to do is we get to move 2 spaces for free. So it's going to move 2 spaces for free, because that's the thing that happens for our chapter card. And then we get to continue the story from immediately right where we left off. Unless the chapter card specifically said start a new round, which this one doesn't, we're going to continue the gameplay exactly where we left off. So now that I'm 2 spaces away from this nice exploding horrible creature, and now that I have 3 stamina left over, now I think it's a good time to go ahead and shoot this thing, because I think I can actually do something by shooting it. Although, if I spend a life, I know that's a huge risk and probably not a good idea yet, I can move here, which means I can guarantee that it cannot attack me next round. Decisions. I am not going to do that. Let's go ahead and spend 1, 2, 3 stamina, and that's going to allow us to activate our firearm. And we're going to go ahead and shoot this creature with our firearm. Remember, it rolls 3 white dice. It also has the augment, meaning that it has arcane powder. And let's go ahead and roll the 3 white dice and see exactly what we're going to get. We're going to gain 5. That's enough to perform 1 hit versus a creature, and that means it's going to take 1 point of damage. So let's go ahead and put 1 point of damage on it. Unfortunately, this nasty, horrible thing does have multiple hit points, so let's put 1 point of damage to signify that it took a point of damage. We're completely out of stamina, so now we get to go to the spawn phase. So spawn phase, it is now down to 6, which means monsters are going to start coming out of the woodwork. We knew that was going to happen, right? And that was a 9. which means we're going to spawn a creature. So let's go ahead and see what nasty fun we're going to go ahead and spawn. And we're going to get a Buopoth. Now, he has 2 armor, 2 arcane, 2 hit points. Not liking these 2 hit point creatures, and he also has 5 stamina. He has a no range 2 stamina attack, which is going to be a black and a white die, but when this monster is hit, it moves 2 spaces toward the nearest spawn base. When this monster arrives, it's going to move 2 spaces towards the nearest hero. So let's go ahead and put him on a spawn space. And then he gets moved 2 spaces towards the nearest hero. So 1, 2 spaces towards the nearest hero. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Now the interesting thing is we're laying these monsters out from left to right because they're going to activate from left to right all the way up to 4 monsters. If there's ever more than 4 monsters, threat's going to start raising. So that's always going to be a bad thing. So since our spawn rating is at 6 and we rolled a 6, we don't need to adjust that. So let's just go ahead and go to our horror phase directly. And horror level is currently set at 4. Oh, I'm sure I can easily roll that. There's a 7. Yep, very easily roll that. So let's go ahead and increase the threat. And remember, we're getting ever so close to that spawn point, which means we're going to start shuffling those level 2 monsters, those wonderful level 2 monsters. Let's find out what kind of horror card we get to deal with now. Lure of the Dark. What happened? Why are we here? What? I don't. We blinked our eyes in the gloom, wondering how we had arrived at this spot. I think it's because we follow that trail of blood. Just assuming. Yep, it's a trail of blood. None of us could remember anything of the past few moments, as if we had moved forward without thought or will. The only thing certain was that we now stood closer to the malevolently glowing symbols on the ground. Explorers moved 2 spaces towards their nearest spawn point. No, I don't like that. Bad card. Okay, 2 spaces towards the nearest spawn point. That would mean we would have to, well, let's see here. Does that put us closer? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, unfortunately it does. So we'll go 2 spaces closer to the nearest spawn point. Well, that kind of just stole that wonderful thing away that we had where we're feeling just great about moving away from the horrible, nasty creature that's going to attack us twice next round. That was my loud voice. Although, actually, let's go ahead and take this back because guess what? I forgot about my reflexive sextant, which would have activated at the start of the round. And I knew I wanted to move that way, so I would have moved like that at the start of the round. Doesn't make a huge difference, but it kind of makes a difference now because remember that reflexive sextants I get there? At the start of every round, I get to move up to 1 space. Well, I knew I wanted to move this way. Sorry, I know it looks like I'm retconning, but come on, I forgot a card. Work with me here. So now we get to move 2 spaces towards the spawn spot, and that'll be 1, 2 like that. Now it's not quite that bad. And now I know some are yelling at me that I'm retconning, while others are yelling, yay, remember to use your cards. So I'm on team use your cards if you want to figure out which team I'm on. That's just my team. So now that we did that, now the bad guys get to activate. Now the bad guys get to activate, and we're going to start with the Thrall, who gets to move adjacent. So he's going to spend 1 stamina to move right there. Now I know he would actually move like that because they want to be orthogonal if possible. And since he couldn't get the second attack anyways, if he could have actually got 2 attacks, he would stop there. Since he can't get 2 attacks, that does mean he will stop right there. Doesn't block us. We're actually okay there. That's 2 of his stamina. And now he gets to attack us with 2 black and 2 white dice. I'm pretty sure we are going to lose a hit point. Actually, no. He takes 3 stamina to perform his attack. So he's only going to move right there. And right the first time. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 total on our roll. Our armor is only going to be 3. That means we are going to lose another hit point. Remember, the trick to get past this chapter is we need to burn 4 life. Right now, we cannot do that. I mean, I could burn essence if I want to, but I'm not quite at that point because essence is powerful. That is it for the Thrall. Now the Buopoth gets to activate. He has 5 stamina. He does get adjacent to me to attack, so he's going to go move 1, 2, just like that. That leaves him with 3 stamina left over. Luckily, his attack takes 2 stamina, so it means he only gets to attack me once. That's 1 time way too many. And I'll roll 2. Hey, that's kind of cool. My armor is a 3, so he did not quite hit me hard enough to do a point of damage, so I didn't take any damage. So that actually worked out great. That's the end of the monster phase. Let's go ahead and go to the explorer phase. Now, at the start of the explorer phase, I'm going to remember to use a reflective sextant, and I'm going to move 1 space over like that. Why am I going to do that? Because I'm going to unload on that stupid Sorrel. Hopefully he'll explode, take out the Boopoth, and I'll be happy. So, first things first, let's go ahead and use first things first, refresh our stamina. And then we're going to burn 3 of that stamina to go ahead and use our cicatrizer with the arcane powder, which is going to be 3 white dice, and we are going to target the Sorrel. Now remember, if we just do 1 point of damage to him, he's going to explode because we already did 1 point of damage to him last round, and we just need to roll a 2 or higher. Actually, just a 1 or higher thanks to the arcane powder. And we got 4 plus 1 is 5, so he is most definitely destroyed. So a couple of different things are going to happen here. 1, let's move that hit point off there. He is going to go into the discard pile, but before he does that, he's going to explode. So let's go ahead and take care of that explosion. This would be really awesome if he explodes. Okay, I need 2 on the white dice. I got 2. So that's going to be 3 points of damage, or 3, sorry. Get so used to the game terms sometimes. This guy's armor level is only 2, so he is going to take 1 point of damage right there from the explosion of the Sorrel. The Sorrel's death is going to give us 1 point of essence. It's going to go in the discard pile and go over there. But the cool thing about this is we still have 3 stamina left over, and I only need to hit him 1 time. Now when this monster is hit, it moves 2 spaces towards the nearest spawn point. So it's going to go 1, 2 spaces. Just like that. And do I still have line of sight, or is the rebel going to mess me up? Let's see if we still have line of sight. I need, let's see here, center to center. Yeah, I think we're okay. We are okay. Let's go ahead and burn our remaining 3 stamina. But before we do that, let's see if we healed from shooting and killing that Boopoth, or not the Boopoth, but the Sorrel. Remember, my gun says if I get an 8 or higher, I heal. I got a 7, not quite enough to heal. Okay, now we're going to shoot the Boopoth for our remaining stamina. And we got 1, 2, plus our plus 1 free one from our arcane is going to be 3. That defeats him. Life is happy. Let's go ahead and remove that. He is dead. Let's gain 1 point of essence for defeating another bad guy, just like that. And then, let's see if I roll 8 or higher. Actually, no, it's a 7 or higher, and I got a 7 last time. So I restored 1 health for my gun earlier. Now I see a 7 or higher again. And that'd be a 2. That's not quite a 7 or higher, but we're back up to 5 health. And you have a remove from the board. That was actually an extremely good round for us. So I think what we are going to do right now, since we have this wonderful setup of the board right here, right now, let us go ahead and spend 1 health, which will put a counter just like that towards the 4. We'll spend 1, 2, 3 essence like that, which would be, show you how this would work. That would give us a total of 4 more of the tokens we need to advance the chapter. Since we only need 4 to advance the chapter, let's go ahead and advance the chapter for this block chapter and figure out exactly what's going to happen for our next chapter as we move into chapter number 3. But if you want to see how chapter 3 is going to play out, you need to check out the next video in the series. Go ahead and check out the next video. Thanks for watching.